Here on Locked On Boston College, we are going deep into the heart of Texas.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College. I am your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs help you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, BC football is in the midst of recruiting season. The portal, or not portal, the period opened just about a week ago, with BC able to now go to schools and visit kids and have them on campus to check them out. Now, if you've been following along, BC has a few new wrinkles in their staff already, and it's June 17th or January 17th. Azar Abdul Rahim, their defensive coordinator, is now at Maryland with a very similar role. And Jason Tudrian, the director of player personnel, is off to the UC report, which is part of the Under Armour camp series. So BC has some new staffing that they're going to have to hire for. But the rest of the staff is around the country, and they are offering kids from anywhere from Massachusetts to California. But one place in particular caught my attention on Tuesday, and that is the state of Texas. Now, if you've been following Boston College football recruiting, this is kind of a new revelation for the Eagles, as before this year, before the last 5 years or so, Texas was a state rich in talent, but not a ton of kids coming to Boston College. The years of Jagosinski and Spaziani, they never really dug deep into that state. And credit to Steve Adazio, who kind of started that renaissance with the state that a lot of folks really associate with really good football players. And Jeff Hafley has kind of taken that torch and really escalated it, because for when Adazio started out, it was just like Tyler Vrabel and maybe one other guy that was from Texas. Right now, the roster has 7 players from the state of Texas. You can look at anyone from Ryan O'Keefe, like just looking at last year's roster, Ryan O'Keefe, Montrell Wade. There's a ton of kids that are on this roster, and they're only getting more. You get Jerron Bradley, the transfer from Texas Tech, who's on campus already. You have 2 kids coming in the class of 2024 with Cedric Lott and Ashton McShane, the defensive back. Both of those kids are from Texas. So what has led to this amount of success, where you have a roster that has about 8 or 9% of the kids right now from the state of Texas? There's one person you could point to, and that is Darrell Wyatt, wide receiver coach who came over from UCF. He has a very long history in the state of Texas. I believe he worked for the University of Texas at one point, but he has great relationships with a lot of the high school coaches in the area. And when you have good relationships, that opens doors for a school like Boston College. And BC can bring those kids up here, up north. Now, Wyatt is very important to this staff, especially with Azar Abdul Rahim leaving, because you have a bunch of guys now on your staff who some of them are more solid recruiters than others. You see guys like Vince Okabase or Savon Huggins, who have had some success with some of the guys that they're looking at their position, but you're missing, because of AAR's departure, a ace recruiter, someone who comes in and can take over some of those big recruiting spots across the country. And that's what Abdul Rahim did a really nice job with. I mean, a lot of guys you wouldn't expect, he was a big name there because he opened doors for them and he had a good relationship with the kids. I look at Darrell Wyatt and what he's done in Texas, and I think if BC does not go in the route of finding a guy to fill that coaching spot that is a very good recruiter, and that might be hard. Getting a very, very strong recruiter that can basically run your recruiting um, is a challenge, especially this late in the game. So they may not be able to find that, but maybe Daryl Wyatt could be that coach. He works. He's funny from the sources I've talked to. He's kind of on his own island. He does his own things to get the attention of the recruits and transfers he wants. And when they're ready to pop, I think it sounds like almost like he makes that decision. He obviously runs it by Hafley first, but I feel like he works in the shadows more. So he's not the same kind of Azab Rahim is all over social media. You see him everywhere. Daryl Wyatt's not that kind of guy, so he may not fit that role. But again, this is about the state of Texas too. This is about how BC in the last 24 hours continues to hammer out offers in that state. And yeah, a school like Boston College does make 3, 4, 500 offers in a class, and you're only going to get 14 commitments from last year, or 12 commitments last year, 25 another. But if you're putting more of an emphasis on those offers going out in Texas compared to, say, a state like Massachusetts right now, where there isn't a ton of top end talent, you got a quarterback going to Clemson, a quarterback going to UVA. Other than that, there's only a few other names that may be Power 5 players. You're doing the right thing. I think this is a smart move by Jeff Hafley to go to the state that has some of the better talent and that basically living by the motto of iron sharpens iron. College football at BC and high school football and some of those high schools in Texas isn't that far off. Now, the one drawback of hitting Texas hard and focusing a lot of your energy there is that Texas has a lot of differences than the state of Massachusetts, moving up to Chestnut Hill. Obviously the biggest difference, weather is going to be a big one, but distance, right? It for families, it's tough. It's not an easy move for kids to make when they have to go across the country, and then their parents, have to be able to afford to drive up or fly up to see them, while you have other kids from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, whatever, that can easily get to those games. So it's a bit of a culture shock there. The school itself, Massachusetts, just the culture itself and the way that people interact is very, very different than Texas. So you have kids that just don't pan out because they don't want to make that trip. You look at last summer, if you listen to some of our earlier episodes, Josiah Martin and Keondae Henry were both big time recruits that were landed by Daryl Wyatt. Neither of them landed at Boston College. And there's a myriad of reasons why, but I look at that as a reason, as part of the drawback is it's going to be tougher to close the deal sometimes with these kids from Texas than it may be for schools that you have good relationships with, because there's a bunch of factors that could go against you. So in our second segment, we're going to continue our episode on or 2/3 of our episode on recruiting, talking about a weekend that was not utilized the way I thought it would be, but some big weekends coming up for BC football. I'll get into all of that in just a moment. Now, LinkedIn is the place to go when you have a new job and you have a hire that you want to make. At the start of a new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. It's not just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. So go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black. This is the second episode. You guys ever, you may not even know this, but I record these live, and I recorded a whole episode and made a huge mistake when when I listened back to it. And one of the fans listens and caught it, and I was like, I can't let that go out there. I made such a stupid mistake, and I just realized after, I'm like, I gotta re-record this. I didn't like how the whole episode came out, so this is take number 2. Sometimes I want the best product for you guys. So I'm making a new episode here. Now, last weekend was the first live weekend of the 2024 football recruiting schedule. We just got out of a dead period. That's when you could connect with recruits, but they had to, I believe, it actually was like a quiet dead period. So the recruits could connect with you, but you couldn't go to their school, and you couldn't have kids on campus. So it was just like basically talking and texting. Now they can have kids on campus, which is big because good staffs. That's where they can lay down the foundation for later commitments. That's when you could say to a kid, this is what's going to happen, and we'd love to get you for an official visit. That helps. And you get that eyeball on some of these kids and able to start to weed out ones that are just not a fit for your culture. Now, the first weekend, it was crickets. If you're a follower of mine on Eagle Insider, if you have a subscription, you're probably waiting for that visitor list, because if you go on social media, you follow anyone from any other school, whether it's Notre Dame or Syracuse or Rutgers or Penn State, and they're all talking about this person's visiting, and this big name from New Jersey is coming here, and a big cornerback from Pennsylvania is visiting here, but nothing. And believe me, folks, my job is part of my job is getting that recruiting news. There wasn't much going on out there. And I was surprised. And I'm always surprised when BC does this. It seems every year they open up all this recruiting, and there's a week where BC kind of doesn't do anything. And they have their rationale, I'm sure. It's not that they're just lazy or anything. I don't think that's the reason at all. I'm sure that they had coaches around the country doing visits and things like that, but there was no one on campus. There was no one there, except for the transfers, who are all there right now. The only one that we're waiting for is Cam Martinez. Every other transfer is there. That might have been part of the reason too. But when you're looking ahead, there's going to be more big weekends up ahead. And this is going to be crucial because for the first time in 3 years, Jeff Hafley has some momentum going for him. And now you may laugh. You may say to yourself, you won the Fenway Bowl. Who cares? And I get that. But a good coaching staff can show that that's momentum. You just beat a top 25 team, won a bowl game, and you got a trophy, and you're flying high and feeling good. You can show them the 5-game winning streak that you went on. There's a lot you can sell. So getting them on campus is going to be big. And I will have the full recruiting visitor list up on Eagle Insider later this week when I get it from the staff. But this is when things are going to start to solidify, when we're going to be able to start to say, hey, this is what our big board is going to look like. This is going to be when you can say to yourself, oh, BC has a chance with this guy. This guy, maybe not. And, I expected him to be part of their group, but he hasn't made it to campus yet. Maybe he's not interested in Boston College. But I'm looking forward to this because I think we all can be frank that last year's class was a little underwhelming. And Hafley has still things to do with the transfer portal to fix that, because obviously he put more emphasis at the end on fixing the transfer portal class because he needed upper class talent to solidify this season. But I think part of it is that he's going to have to go back to bread and butter high school recruiting at some point. You can't just do transfer portals all the time. So I'm imagining that there's going to be more of an emphasis on the class of 2025. Right now, Boston College has one commitment for this class. So it tells you there's a lot of openings here and a lot of chances for BC to start to make some moves. They have Nolan James, a running back from DePaul Catholic in New Jersey, who committed about a month ago. Since then, they haven't had anything. But that's kind of been par for the course over the last year. Remember, for the class of 2024, it was Christian Zamore who was the only one committed until June. It took a while for Boston College to really fill out there. And once they did, it started going fast. So this isn't out of left field for the Eagles. I just look at ahead and say, hopefully these weekends are going to be packed, because when you had that first weekend and nothing happened, you gotta take advantage of all these other ones. Maybe their road work will pay off in getting more bigger names on campus. But you look at what other schools are doing right now. You look at Syracuse. Syracuse is killing it out there. Fran Brown hasn't coached a game yet, and so there's a little bit of that, pie in the sky look at what he could do. But he's making his job a lot easier with what he's being able to bring to the orange. Now Hafley's got to be able to react to that and be able to do the same type of thing here at BC. And right now it's going to be a little bit tougher, but we'll see what he can do. Now in our final segment, I'm going to talk a little bit about basketball. I want to get into what the Eagles have ahead of them and look at what the ACC has become, because it's getting a lot tougher for the Eagles coming up. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. Now, let me talk to you for a moment here. We usually talk about sports, but I want to escape to some of the crazy realities of real life. Can we just talk a minute bit about preparing for real life? According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season in over a decade. This is scary. I can't imagine a more helpless feeling than if my wife or one of my kids got sick with a supply chain issue because they needed life medication and they couldn't get what they needed. Thankfully, we'll be okay because of Jase Medical. The Jase case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, including UTIs, respiratory infections, sinusitis, skin infections, among others. This stuff could happen to any of us. Visit jasemedical.com and complete your physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications will be dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to prepare than today. Go to jasemedical.com and use offer code LOCKEDON to get $20 off your order. Now, the NFL regular season has wrapped up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With the second round of the NFL playoffs coming up, there's so much action. Do you think the Baltimore Ravens with Zay Flowers are going to be able to win, being the #1 seed in the AFC East? Maybe you want to get a prop bet on what Zay Flowers receiving yards are going to be. You can do the over-unders. You could do a parlay. You could go with what Lamar Jackson's rushing yards would be with Zay Flowers receiving yards with the spread. You can do anything you want. Zay Flowers anytime touchdown. Anything is up there on FanDuel. And with live game parlays, anything, you can find it so easy, and you can make your parlays in seconds. It's so easy to use. So visit fanduel.com/locked on and make your first bet a layup with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black. We're going to get into our final segment here in just a moment. But before I do that, I just want to talk about a few quick things. I saw the swim team, and I don't really want to get into it, but their suspension for this hazing scandal has been extended to August, and all 4 coaches on the swimming and diving team have been relieved of their duties. I don't know this whole situation. Anytime I bring it up, I get yelled at. So that's just an update on what that's about. And I don't cover swimming and diving, so it's not like every time I bring it up, I probably get something wrong about it. So that's just the news. I wanted to bring that up to you. The one thing I do want to bring up is the Cutter Gauthier news, where obviously everyone knows about him getting traded to the Anaheim Ducks and the whole controversy with that, and Kevin Hayes. People making comments about Kevin Hayes and his brother, which is disgusting, and then making death threats at Cutter Gauthier. this whole thing is a freaking mess. And the folks that are making the comments, like if you want to boo him, go for it. Boo Gautier all he wants. He's playing a great villain right now. And honestly, he kind of deserves it. But the stuff about like Jimmy Hayes that they're saying to Kevin and the stuff that they're saying, the death threats that Gautier is making, like, get a life. That's all I got to say about that. I just wanted to get my 2 cents there. Now, basketball. I want to get into basketball for just a moment. Now, BC basketball has a big game this weekend against the UNC Tar Heels, and they're the number one team in the ACC. And earlier this season, and I think we talked about it with Beak, you looked at the schedule and there was moments where you're like, oh man, this is great. BC gets 2 games against Notre Dame, 2 games against Florida State, and 2 games against Louisville. Perfect. Now, the bad news is that Florida State's figured things out. The even more bad news is Louisville isn't that bad anymore. I know they're getting trucked by they're only down by 10 right now. Sorry. When I started recording, they were down by like 20 to UNC. They're coming back against UNC. So you look at these games and there's no more gimmies. Like you were hoping that, like, yeah, you get to play Louisville twice. That's 2 easy wins. You get to play Florida State twice. That's 2 easy wins. And as we saw with Notre Dame, they're with Marcus Burton, they're playing much better. This road is getting much tougher. BC's got to start to improve. And as we said on this podcast, the defense has to wake up. The lapses that they've had on defense has been killer. And if they do that, first of all, they do that against UNC, they're going to get blown out of the gym. But you're gonna lose more games that you shouldn't lose by playing like that. You have to be able to play more complete, complementary basketball on both ends of the court, so that you don't risk that kind of loss. I look at the schedule and I'm saying to myself, I saw that Ken Palm had them as, what was it, like winning 8 conference games. That's not what you want, because this is the last year of Quentin Post. You got to start winning more. So I'm not sure what Earl Grant needs to do to make sure that this team continues an upward trajectory. But when you see that Louisville, Florida State, Notre Dame, they're all going in the right direction. The only team that I see that seems to be going backwards or actually a couple teams, is Miami, oddly enough, who just lost to Florida State, and Pitt. Pitt seems to be struggling a little bit too, but BC always has a terrible history with Pitt. So just things are getting a little bit more dicey for the Eagles. And I just wanted to bring that up. Now on tomorrow's show, got a little bit of a nugget for you before you leave. BC landed another transfer. Now because I want to respect the kid and I want to let him make the announcement himself, can't announce it myself here on this podcast yet. If you go over to Eagle Insider, you may get that preview there. I've got a couple nuggets up there that maybe you'll help give it away. And I think some of the fans are figuring it out too. But make sure you subscribe to YouTube for Locked On Boston College, or wherever you get your podcast. Like this video. Please like it. It does help other people find it. And share it. If you're an everyday listener, thank you so much for listening to Locked On Boston College every single day. Every one of you who does that, you guys are the GOATs. And everyone who's just checking this out, I want to welcome you. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We're the only Boston College podcast that does this 5 days a week. I want to thank you. We're up to almost 800 episodes of just talking about Boston College sports. They said it couldn't be done, but I'm doing it. Thank you all so much. We'll be back again for another show tomorrow. You can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. And thank you again. And we'll see you all again for tomorrow's show of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.